emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 309.IS4302, certificate number 12398, the Cuyahoga River Fire.
Man's mark is everywhere. Is this mark an epitaph for the Cuyahoga, the crooked river?
You know, there was a whole period where futurelings thought it was hilarious to count how long, or to time how long it would take for us to actually mention the topic of the show in Omnibus. What was the longest one, if you recall, futurelings sort of gossiping?
I think Bill W. is the record holder, and it's over an hour.
Over an hour we talked before I actually mentioned Bill W.
It's like an hour and 10 minutes. And really, to me, that's not a strike against the show.
No.
It just means we were really building up to it.
It's like jazz. There are no wrong notes in Omnibus.
There's 2 minutes of intromission about Bill W., but there was well over an hour of Bill W. foreplay.
Yeah. But lately it feels like we've been mentioning the topic of the show kind of up front. And I'm just going to dive right into the Cuyahoga River Fire because the story, it's given away by the topic. It's not like you can tiptoe around it.
Here's an impression of how this might have gone.
Okay.
Ken, you ever drive across a river that's on fire?
Ken, how many rivers have you crossed?
Have you ever lit a river on fire? You ever see water burn? You ever see a man say goodbye to a shoe? Do you like Roman gladiator movies?
Yeah. Have you ever seen a river on fire?
No, and in fact, I don't believe that's a thing.
Have you ever seen water on fire?
Water can't be on fire.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
I feel like when I was a kid, I saw, magazine ads always used to be for cigarettes and liquor.
Yes.
And there was a picture of some cocktail, which was, I don't know it was a couple coffee beans at the bottom of a glass of rum, maybe, and then the whole thing was lit on fire. Am I just making this up?
No, you obviously have not spent your time in bars where people are throwing flaming cocktails around.
I mean, I'm vaguely aware that flaming cocktails exist, but it really a couple coffee beans at the bottom of anyway.
I don't know about that, but it's very popular to set your booze on fire because it burns off the booze, and you can drink it then, and
that's why I do it.
Not get drunk.
That's why I do it. And I was just amazed that this, cause whatever the liquor was, it was clear. So it looked like a couple coffee beans and some water, but the water was on fire.
Yeah.
And I was mesmerized by it as a child.
I mean, I'm definitely the product of magazine ads of the early 70s selling liquor and cigarettes.
I mean, I can tell just by your outfit and your grooming that you're a product of those ads.
That's right.
You're going to roll up your sweater sleeves and go toss a Frisbee and smoke a Newport.
It was all I knew, in fact, about the wider world. I remember in Alaska in the 70s pouring through magazines at these very sophisticated people. There were the camel ads where the guy with the Land Rover was crossing the Darien Gap, smoking camels the whole way. He seemed cool. He always had a blonde mustache. And then there were the cowboys.
I think it was always people on boats.
But there were very sophisticated people, too, in tuxedos who were drinking and smoking and laughing. They were having such a good time, and I wanted to have a good time.
That was from the age of, successful people are wearing tuxedos.
Yes.
All the time.
What am I, a farmer?
There was like a Jeopardy ad from the early 90s, I think, where Alex Trebek dressed in a tuxedo would go around and do heroic things. Like he would save a woman from tied to a railroad track.
Really?
And he'd be wearing a tuxedo. And this is obviously a post James Bond kind of view of the world.
Yeah.
But just the idea that people doing glamorous
Harpooning a
things
whale.
will always have tuxedos on is very funny to me because really, I mean, what are you going to do? Like return the rental once the lady is off the railroad tracks? It's a bit of a...
No, you own the tuxedo.
Even if you own the tuxedo, you're not going to put it on to have an adventure on a train track.
The first time I ever saw tortoiseshell glasses, in the 70s, everybody was wearing weird square metal framed glasses. Mm-hmm. And there was one of these cigarette ads of a bunch of very cool looking preppy people in tuxedos laughing. And one of the guys had round tortoiseshell glasses. Now this was before the 80s where they became ubiquitous fashion statements. This was when they were still like weird. You had to be McGeorge Bundy to be wearing these cool tortoiseshell glasses. And I saw them in a magazine ad and I said, I don't know who that is. I don't know what that is, but that's me. That's me. And I got some. And then when they started to become popular in the early 80s, I was like, who are you interlopers?
You were there early.
Yeah, you fakers.
My sexual preference is McGeorge Bundy.
That's right. If you didn't aspire to be the Secretary of State in the Johnson administration, then you don't have any right to wear these glasses. The Cuyahoga River fire.
Did you know, by the way, that you can pretty much use any vowel for the first syllable of Cuyahoga? Webster's recommends Cuyahoga first, followed by Cuyahoga, schwa,
yeah.
Cuyahoga, and Cuyahoga.
Cuyahoga.
So your options are I, and O.
It's confusing because the origin of the word Cuyahoga is in considerable dispute. So I can see where on one hand, you can see where the pronunciation problem comes because most of the time it's a case of somebody mispronouncing a native name or a
sure.
Italian name. In this case, depending on what you think is of the origin of the name, it's just... Oh,
I assumed Native American. It's not.
No, it's white people just arguing about which mistranslation of a Native American word it is. One of the potential sources of the name is there's a Mohawk word that sounds not that similar to Cuyahoga, but that means crooked river. And the Cuyahoga River is a crooked river in that the headwaters of the river are not very far from its ultimate terminus.
Oh, it just zigzags like Lombard Street in the outskirts of Cleveland or something.
It kind of hooks like a raccoon penis bone.
What's the Mohawk word for raccoon penis bone?
The historical record is silent on what the Mohawk word is, but so it starts up kind of Allegheny forest and then around Erie, and then it swings down around and then comes back out in the lake. The problem with it having a Mohawk origin is the Mohawk never lived anywhere around there.
But did they ever, maybe one of them took a trip and was just impressed by the crookedness of this river, so he has to go home and be like, hey, the thing about Cleveland is they've got this crooked river.
Right, and all the people that lived around there were like, you know what, that's a great word, Cuyahoga.
And then they're like, hey, do you remember when Steve was talking about, like, we've just got straight rivers, straight-ahoga.
Right, but this one is like Hookahoga.
Yeah.
The Seneca Indians lived more closely, more proximate, and they have a word sort of vaguely similar sounding, not really at all, that effectively means jawbone or
raccoon jawbone?
Not raccoon jawbone, but just it means hooked jaw,
and that would match the shape of the bend.
Sort of looks like the jawbone of not of a human, but of a panther, but without the teeth. But all that seems somewhat...
All these things go through French and then Spanish and then...
Yeah.
Did I ever do my favorite one of these on the show, which is the theory that Wisconsin and Oregon may come from the same word?
Really?
Yeah. Like there's some map that says the word was like reconsant or something, and that became Wisconsin. But then somebody wrote Urekonsant on a map, but they put a hyphen because they ran out of room after the N, and somebody didn't see the Sant and just thought it was Oregon. And they were like, oh, okay, out west is Oregon. Got it. So it's possible that Wisconsin and Oregon are deep down
the same.
They're just the same state. They got Tillamook cheese versus
cheese curds,
cheese heads, and other than that, it's just exactly the same.
Knowing both states a little, Oregon better than Wisconsin, but knowing Wisconsin a little, I don't see any resemblance between Oregon and Wisconsin.
They are dairyland.
Yeah, but Oregon's not really. I mean, they make Tillamook cheese and ice cream.
They make it from sea lion milk. They milk the sea lions.
That factory is like 400 yards from the beach. Like, I don't know. There's not and the mountain's right above it. I don't know how you get a bunch of cows in there.
You don't go to Wisconsin for the beach?
The Wisconsin beach.
Dells?
Yeah, there. I definitely go to, when I think of the beach, I think of Lake Michigan. But Lake Erie is another great beach.
There is a village of Oregon in Wisconsin, so you can go to Oregon, Wisconsin. However, there is no place called Wisconsin in Oregon, I'm sorry to say.
Although Oregon is maybe just another way of spelling Wisconsin.
And, classic Rose Bowl matchup, I guess. So we don't know where Cuyahoga comes from.
Well, but there's another tribe that actually...
Oh, I interrupted you before the third and possibly the best theory. When I do this, I always put the most likely one last.
This isn't even the third, or this isn't even the last. It is the third. But the Wyandot Indian tribe actually lived there.
Okay, this one I like.
And they were the only native population that actually lived in the region. And they have a word that sounds not really like Cuyahoga, that means small land. And it is
Isn't a river the absence of land?
But I mean, the river hooks around and sort of like encompasses a sort of little small land.
The way that you always know if it's right is if the word just means, place, like the local tribe called it river.
Call it river place.
Yeah. And
then the final suggestion, because on like a lot of this, it sort of feels like, oh, these are all later. Some farmers adopted it because somebody slurred it one time, but the Iroquois that live sort of in the region are actually called the Cuyahoga tribe.
Oh, I've heard that.
And Cuyahoga...
That actually is extremely close.
Seems like the closest one of all these.
And it's the noise I want my car horn to make.
Cuyahoga. But the word Cuyahoga in its present form appears on French maps of the region, like all the way back before the colonies even got there.
Okay, it's centuries old. Whatever the game of telephone was, it ended in a year that may have started with 16.
Yeah, it was a long time before there were any Mennonites in the region. In fact, the Cuyahoga River, very briefly, in 1785, was the western boundary of the United States. And then...
Wisconsin and Oregon.
Yeah.
It was the Pacific Ocean of its day.
They got to the Cuyahoga and they were like, no further. And then the next person got there and crossed the river and on they went.
I would have been more like the first guy, I think.
When you think about yourself, because of course your forebears kept going and continued to keep going on and on and on until you made it out till you went to Korea.
Yeah, that's right.
But do you think that you are? Do you have the disposition of if you're in your Conestoga wagon,
not my Cuyahoga wagon,
and you arrived at a river, would you say, let's build a house, or would you continue on?
I am Mr. What's on the other side of that river, as my family knows to their annoyance when they try to go hiking with me.
You're like, what's on? Come on, one more river.
Yeah, and it's you're on a hike, and I often will be the one who has top fever. Like, well, we can't stop here. The trail ends half a mile up there.
Sure, the false summit seems to appear to be right over there.
And then I am Mr. Hey, there's another false summit. Look at that.
It's not. This wasn't the summit. Onward.
Got to go a little further. What if we missed the good thing?
Excelsior. The good thing is up there where there are no trees.
And I don't believe the good thing has ever actually come between
my wife wanted to turn around and me wanted to turn around. I'm like, 0 for 50.
You're chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Sure.
You're not going to catch it, Ken.
It's receding in front of me.
It's right there, but you're never going to. It's like if you fold a piece of paper over and over, you're never going to get there.
I'm never going to get those Skittles.
Cut each number in half, and you will never reach infinity.
Yeah.
Or zero.
That's the Hilbert origami.
Yeah. But once settlers settled there, and the original settlement at the mouth of the river, which was a kind of delta, like most rivers when they entered a lake, sort of spread out and became a marshy delta. It's part of the rhythm of life that a river creates this verdant swamp.
Is that what you think of as the rhythm of life?
The rhythm of life is the
rivers make swamps.
We sow the seed, nature grows the seed, and then we eat the seed.
Where do the swamp rivers come in?
But also, the water goes up, the water comes down, the water goes up, the water comes down.
It's the water cycle. I don't know if that's the rhythm of life.
What do you think the rhythm of life is?
The rhythm of life is like lions eat zebras, zebras eat grass. Grass eats worms, worms eat lions.
Is it? It's Rhythm Nation.
We're a part of the Rhythm
River
Nation.
of life is. In this case, the rhythm of life is water goes up, water comes down, and because this is my show, and I'm gonna bang that tambourine. But the original settlement there on the Cuyahoga became the great city of Cleveland.
Originally spelled weird. Cleveland was named for a guy, like an early settler named Moses Cleveland, I think, who had an extra E in his name.
Cleave.
Cleave, like cleave, like to cleave into.
Yeah, right.
And then when the city was named after him, I guess they just misspelled his name.
That seems to be really how things get named in this country.
This says one theory is that his own surveying party misspelled his name on their map.
Yeah.
Boy, get a better surveying partner, Mr. Wealthy Connecticut surveyor.
I don't know if you've ever read the journals of Lewis and Clark uncorrected.
But their spelling is...
But Meriwether Lewis is... he spelled words differently every time he wrote them.
Probably including Meriwether.
Right. Merry, Merri.
Spelling was not an exact science back then, whereas today it's our most important way of dismissing an opinion.
Right.
If somebody put an extra apostrophe in its,
herp-a-derp,
you can be like, oh, you suck.
Jefferson paid for Meriwether Lewis's education, but Jefferson had other stuff going on. And
wait, is that true?
Yeah.
Jefferson paid for... Is Meriwether Lewis Thomas Jefferson's illegitimate son?
It doesn't appear so. It appears that Thomas Jefferson became Meriwether Lewis's patron at a young age because he had a single mom and he was precocious. And Jefferson was like, you know what, son? I'm gonna give you a job here, like shucking corn or whatever, and then put him through school, except he kept leaving school because he had other stuff to do. But this is not about Lewis and Clark.
I want a cool young friend named Meriwether.
Right?
I don't know a single person named Meriwether.
Everybody's named Caden and Jaden and Shaden.
Meriwether's going to come back. It's due.
If I had another child and that child was a boy child, I would...
Meriwether works for any gender or non-binary. It's the perfect name.
It's
we all like
true.
things that are merry.
Merriweather.
We all like when the weather is merry and it makes us feel merry.
You could name any child Merriweather. You could name your next dog Merriweather. That would be pretty sly.
I mean, we live in a part of the country where Mary, and Mary are all the same pronunciation, but Lord of the Rings really legitimized calling a boy Mary as long as you spell it the Merry Christmas way.
Right.
So,
and as long as that child is a hobbit.
Yes. All children start out as hobbits.
The Cuyahoga, once the city of Cleveland or town of Cleveland was established there, it was recognized that the Cuyahoga was going to be a river of industry, a river of commerce. And in fact, as early as 1827, the mouth of the river was dredged and reshaped by what would have been a nascent Corps of Engineers.
To build because otherwise it wasn't fit for building a city and port on. Right?
Well, yeah, because it wasn't navigable, because it got shallow and fanned out. And so in order to
I got shallow and fanned out.
I know, so did I. Starting at about age 38. So 1827, we were already engaged in building big projects in the United States, big water projects.
I guess they drained DC like 40 years before that.
If you think about the Erie Canal, it's built and opened in exactly this period of time, and
possibly by the same contractors.
Right, and
get those Ukrainian guys that did the Erie Canal. Get them over here to Cleveland land.
Cleveland also on Lake Erie.
Yeah.
So this was a big time for dredging out things and building waterways to move barges.
And even though the Cuyahoga is short, does it go long enough that this is going to be a useful way to get timber or whatever out of northern Ohio?
Yeah, well, the Cuyahoga goes up past Akron, so you're halfway, and then
it goes into your mom's least favorite part of Ohio. Then,
yeah, that's right.
It passes the Roderick line, Roderick Dixon line.
It does, and oh boy, we're into something now. Pittsburgh, does it have not Petersburg? Petersburg.
We need to leave this in of you spelling Pittsburgh Penisburg or whatever just happened.
So, Pittsburgh is the convergence of the Monongahela, the Allegheny, and the Ohio.
That's why they have Three River Stadium.
That's right.
They're always bragging about how they have more rivers than other cities.
How many rivers do you have to challenge Pittsburgh?
I mean, really, Three River Stadium, it's where those three meet to become the Ohio. I would have called it Four River Stadium.
The thing is that, it's kind of not fair to say that it's three rivers because two of those rivers become a third river.
Oh.
Right? Like the Ohio isn't running backwards and it's like, hey, fellas.
Oh, I thought three rivers met there to become the Ohio. No?
My sense of it is no.
I think you're probably right. And you're right. Then they are cheating. That's stolen valor.
Yeah, they're kind of cheating. But if you think about where the Cuyahoga goes, it gets you up into that sort of Akron, Canton, and then you've got Youngstown over there, and it's really not that far from Pittsburgh. So,
thank you for coming to our podcast. John looks at a map of Ohio.
Shush! If you think about how you're going to move if you're going to move stuff from Pittsburgh to New York City. You can put it on the Ohio River, but where are you going? You're going down to the Mississippi. You're going all the way around.
What you want to do,
you schlep it up to
the Great Lakes.
Yeah, to the Great Lakes, and that's going to get it out of there. So the Cuyahoga had this was an area that was industrializing pretty early. This was going to be the factory region of the United States.
The factory basket, we call it.
The factory basket. So it did become the factory basket, and the Cuyahoga River fire was one of the first. It was very early on our list of omnibus topics. And I think when Futurelings first started pitching ideas to us,
everyone started with
Cuyahoga Fire.
Fire.
And so I resisted doing this show because I don't like to serve any master.
You got to serve somebody.
I don't like pleasing people.
It might be the devil or it might be Cleveland.
No, I don't, if you want a thing, then I'm going to withhold it. That's why I'm not married. But eventually, Cuyahoga River Fire is so omnibus. It's so deeply omnibus and in a way so deeply
American.
and my half of omnibus. I mean, you could have done Cuyahoga Fire as easily as I, but it really seems more like a John than
Urban Decay is more you, right?
Yeah. So
I'm more like Suburban Enemy.
Yeah, and if there was an element of the Cuyahoga River Fire that produced some early computer, maybe it would, you'd find a connection.
I mean, that would be really weird. What a weird computer that would be.
But
emerging from the fire like the liquid metal Terminator.
In fact, the Cuyahoga River Fire produces 70s environmentalism, which is right in my breadbasket.
There's a silver lining.
Right in my industry basket.
Instead of a silver Terminator.
The thing about the Cuyahoga River Fire is that there is one really famous one.
I thought there was only one.
Well, the title of the show would suggest that's true. But in fact, the Cuyahoga River caught fire 13 separate times.
Here, let's do this again. You have accessed entry 309.IS4302, certificate number 12398. The Cuyahoga River fires.
Yeah, that's what it should have done. But we're going to specifically talk about one fire that changed the world.
But can you tell me in a more general way why this? I mean, my point of view on rivers is that they don't. Most of the time, they're not on fire. Is my experience with a river. Why does this one river keep getting set on fire?
Well, it's a slow-moving river, and combined with the sort of way that it was dredged, and kind of it became a sort of brackish, slow river that also had industry built up all around it, and not just steel industry, but we're talking about the discovery of oil in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Happened in about 1860, right before the Civil War. And so all of a sudden you've got this brand new industry springing up. There's an oil rush, and all of the petroleum products, asphalt, the kind of what became petrochemicals.
It's getting processed in Cleveland.
Yeah, in a lot of the upriver industries. And this was at a time when everybody just threw what they weren't using into the river. And so the first major Cuyahoga River fire was in 1868.
Wow.
All the way, set the Wayback Machine to all the way back.
But this did not wake them up. They weren't like, wait, the river is not nature's garbage can.
No, it did not. This was probably at a time when rivers caught on fire all the time. Although there's not a ton of, there's the historic record is somewhat silent on all the other rivers that caught on fire, and it would have been silent on the Cuyahoga fire of 1868 because it was not really, it didn't make the papers, or if it did, it was under an advertisement for mentholatum.
Is this the kind of thing where only retroactively, once the famous fire happened, historians unearth other examples?
Yes, and that's dramatically true because there were 12 times the river caught on fire between 1868 and 1968.
Well, somebody was keeping a list. Some old, port keeper. What's the word for that?
Yeah, port keeper.
Harbor master. The harbor master.
The harbor master.
There we go.
I think it was one where
he's chewing on a pipe made out of a raccoon penis bone.
I bet you it was a Kent State student who, angry about the recent massacre, and
You're creating a composite character for a TV pilot.
went to the Cuyahoga Port Library, and said, just exactly how many times has this happened? The largest river fire, now we're talking about, Cleveland was not just a petrochemical locus, but also this was, Warren, Ohio. These were steel manufacturing places. These were auto manufacturing places into the mid-20th century.
They're dumping in gunk and flammable gunk.
There was gravel being manufactured and like salt. I feel
like I can make gravel, by the way. Like I can't make a car.
Go on.
Just give me a rock and a hammer. I'll make you some gravel.
How, you know what? I've used more gravel in my garden than you could make in a lifetime with a hammer.
Look, I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm not saying I can out manufacture the big boys in the industry, but I feel like I'm going to give you a kind of personal attention with me and my hammer that you're just not going to get.
Yeah, Ken and his hammer.
From Big Gravel.
He hammered on the mountain.
It's like that Dave's Bread or whatever. There's a cartoon of me holding a hammer and it says Ken and his hammer gravel.
Yeah, Ken's artisanal gravel. We'll talk about gravel on a future omnibus episode.
Yes, I love when you do the just common noun.
Yeah, gravel is going to.
If you liked drywall and lint, no, we didn't do lint.
No, but we are going to do gravel. In fact, we may do gravel next week, just because I don't want people to be like, "What are they going to say about gravel?" and run out and Google it.
They already did.
No, don't do it.
Stop right now. Don't Google gravel.
No, keep the surprise. Keep your minds fresh. The largest of all of the recorded fires on the Cuyahoga River actually happened in November of 1952.
Not the famous one.
No, this is not the famous one. This one was a major fire. It burned boats. It's very, very dramatic looking with the flames 5 stories tall coming off the river.
Well, paint a picture for me. When a river catches on fire, are we just imagining like a part of the river that happens to have the pools of asphalt petro gunk, or like is it diffuse enough in the water that pretty much the width of the river is on fire?
Have you watched a World War II movie where a submarine from a wolf pack sinks a tanker?
Sure.
And then all the crew are in the water going, "Help, help," as the fire rages around them?
Those are often not that convincing.
Because it's hard to film people in flaming water without jeopardizing the actors.
See that? I never get that. They'll make more actors.
Well, sure, but think about it.
Especially if it's the guys playing U-boat crew. If it's just a bunch of Central European guys playing German U-boat officers, they're replaceable. Just light the thing on fire.
That would be extremely traumatic, I think, if you were watching a film and you saw actual Central Europeans being burned in an oil fire.
You're not trying to kill them. And I'm not saying you'd put in like Christoph Waltz or like somebody you recognize.
None of the good ones, right?
Yeah, don't put in one of the good ones.
Just some guys from Belarus.
So is it like kind of, are there like areas of fire and then areas of non-fire? Or is it one big circle of fire?
What happened was the petrochemicals that were being deposited into the river over the course of many decades, along with untreated sewage and every other kind of effluent that came out of just giant pipes, including cyanide and paint and mercury from all these industrial processes, because the river was slow moving and had a bunch of bends, it would coagulate. And so you'd get these giant mats of kind of globular, not just petrochemicals, but then mercury and other, like terrible things, and then garbage.
Oh yeah.
Like the globs of oil would
paper and stuff.
Oil cans and old boots. It would just turn into these giant mats that would kind of get caught, and keep collecting more and more gunk. And then over the course of the river that's moving, you have that shimmering layer of oil and gas. I remember one time my dad drove out to some business where I think he was dating the woman that ran the office, and we drove out. You had
to sit in the outer office for an hour, swing your legs in the little chair while
thing.
Weird noises came from.
Right. So this was out
inside.
on Lake Otis, back when Lake Otis was not a paved road. So if you went past Tudor on Lake Otis, past the YMCA, but not all the way to the DMV, on the right-hand side, there was and these used to be ubiquitous in Alaska. It was a brick one-story building, or a cinder block one-story building. And next to it, there was a yard that had 15 Caterpillar tractors and backhoes that were just parked inside of a fence.
This is how I imagine Anchorage.
Yeah, and this is how it was when I was growing up.
There's a Starbucks at the corner of Lake Otis and Tudor now. So
Lake Otis and Tudor used to be a furniture store, and their song, their little jingle was Lake Otis and Tudor. Pretty jazzy little come by the furniture store.
That does really trip off the tongue.
But the YMCA, if you keep going down Lake Otis, I think you can find it there. There's a Y on the left-hand side of the road. If you go past, not all the way to DeBar.
Which way am I headed?
You're headed south on Lake Otis.
Okay.
If you head north on Lake Otis, you're going right past my house. But do you see the YMCA across?
I do.
Yeah,
it's by the Lutheran Church.
So right across
from why I'm following this. Oh boy, now where are we going?
Right across the street from the YMCA, there was this place, and my dad would go there to see this woman. She had red hair, and it was absolutely like you're saying. He would go into her office. They would close the door, and I would be sitting on a plastic chair that was salvaged from an airport.
You're playing one of those little handheld baseball games where you shoot the ball bearing into the outfield.
That was before those existed. I was just swinging my legs, and it was one of these hey kid, go play in traffic type of things, except traffic was this dirt road. So I went out one time into the into the yard of caterpillars, like, D9s all parked in a row.
Right now, it's not Caterpillars anymore, but it is still a vacant lot of cars.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, so there used to be all these backhoes and whatnot. They were probably grading the roads that went from Lake Otis.
Yeah.
And there was a backhoe that had its shovel kind of tucked up. It had been put in the lotus position, and the shovel was tucked up, and it was full of water.
I don't think it can be a yoga position if it's a backhoe. The backhoe is doing downward facing dog.
The hoe was filled with water, and at this point in my life, I was a pyromaniac, and I always had firecrackers in my pocket, and I always had matches because, Ken, there used to be cigarette machines everywhere.
Right.
And cigarette machines had a little button on it that would give you a free pack of matches with every pack.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If you bought a pack of cigarettes, you could push
an extra button.
Separate button, and it would throw a pack of matches down. And that was where my matchbook collection started.
But that's a lot of outlay. Just get a pack of matches. This is when your dad's buying cigarettes?
No, Dad didn't smoke at this point, but everybody in Alaska did.
Oh, you'd hang out?
And the thing is that most people buying a pack of cigarettes didn't need the matches.
So it's like the coin return button.
Yeah, they had a Zippo or whatever it was.
But you would just come up, even an hour later, the next person to use it could still push the button.
That's right. And so everywhere I went, I pushed the change return on phone booths.
I did that.
And I pushed the matches button on cigarette machines. Well, there were cigarette machines everywhere. So I always had matches, and I always had firecrackers, although that wasn't, the grown-ups weren't supposed to know.
What halcyon days for a young pyro.
Oh, man, it was so great. But, I didn't grow up in the 50s, so I didn't have a Red Ryder BB gun with me. But anyway, I was out in the yard with the tractors, and I started lighting matches. Just, in the way that you do, where you light a match and it burns down to your finger and then you throw it out. And I threw a match in the bucket of this backhoe and it went, and all of a sudden it was this giant flame because someone had put gasoline.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know why you would have like gas that you wanted to save, but didn't have anywhere to put. So you put it in this, and then all of a sudden the whole bucket was on fire. Well, a backhoe is a hydraulic powered thing. And so this backhoe is on fire and I'm just like reveling in it. Like I have done it. I have done it.
I thought you would panic.
No, I was like the wizard, with like, I'm conjuring this.
You're about to find out how fast your dad can get his pants on.
And that's exactly what happened. They came, because they're, peeking out through the blinds or whatever. They came running out like, what are you doing? And I don't know. I don't remember how they put out the fire, but this was one of many times that I caused some coitus interruptus in my dad's life.
But this may be the only time using a backhoe.
Yes. All right. The only time using a backhoe, not the only time using fire. But so you can set a body of water on fire. And in most cases, because there were railroad bridges crossing this span of the Cuyahoga, more than one railroad bridge, it was usually just a spark from a passing train. The fire in...
Right, sparks from train wheels.
Right. The fire in 52 caused like what would be now millions of dollars in damage. It burned up some tugboats.
It's going to go to and it'll go to the wooden docks, one would think.
And that's what happened, right? It burned
like the whole waterfront.
It was a big catastrophe, but
luckily, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wasn't there yet.
Not there yet.
They had the National Folk and Bluegrass Hall of Fame there in the 1880s.
Not even that. It was the like crooner Hall of Fame,
Jug Band Hall of Fame,
which burned and no one noticed or cared. But this was the height of the industrial age, right? This was when manufacturing was king. There's a famous photograph of a factory in Texas where it was a power plant that was powered by burning old batteries. And the smoke that's coming out of this thing.
I think that's how Texas's power grid still works, from what I read in the papers.
Just throwing old batteries. People were burning tires. It was, and also absolutely no regulation in terms of cleaning up the world.
As Reagan would call it, the good old days.
The good old days. But it was only 10 years later that Silent Spring was published, and we've referenced that a couple of times on the omnibus. The dawning realization that we were making the world uninhabitable, and And
with technology, it wasn't just like previous nature movements, which is like, don't shoot the little deers and don't pick the little flowers,
or even more European, like go back to nature to find your essential, your native essence.
Now the metaphor is poison.
Yeah.
We are poisoners, and it was accurate.
It was accurate. There was a survey of the Cuyahoga during this period where it was revealed that no life, there was nothing alive.
It's like Jupiter.
Yeah,
no microbes,
nothing. The only life that they could find was an algae called Oscillatoria, which was growing above the water on the pilings of various piers.
But it would die in seconds as soon as the water sloshed onto it.
And everybody that worked around there was like, if you fall in the river, you go to the hospital.
Man.
And so, and you could see like visibility in the river was a question of inches, right? If you like even put your hand in the river, you couldn't see your fingertips. So this was true all across the United States. But the Cuyahoga was not yet a symbol of it. Silent Spring and the sort of early environmental movement, this gained in popularity. In 1968, Washington Senator Henry Jackson,
Scoop,
who was my father's mentor, one of my father's mentors, went to law school with my dad. Not mentor, friend. He was there. They were friends. What am I talking about? Mentor. They were the same age. They were pals. So they all went to my dad and their wives, my mother. They were all
beloved deliverer of pork to the state of Washington from the United States Senate.
And they did a lot of dancing. It was a high old time. He sponsored hearings in the Senate in '68 about creating kind of a national environmental program.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And this was...
I didn't realize that was...
Yeah, this was...
Because there was no EPA at the time.
There was no EPA. There was no... environmental protection was only just becoming a national question, a sense that like, wait, we can't just have local municipalities try to clean up the Cuyahoga.
That's insane that's in your lifetime.
Yeah.
That we think of the environment as it really shows how screwed we are. That in John Roderick's lifetime, the discovery came that environmental cleanup might be a large scale problem.
That's right. And it was, only just before I was born that it even occurred to anybody. And Silent Spring, of course, was talking about, heavy metals appearing in wildlife.
DDT and pesticides and bird eggs.
Killing bird eggs. But the idea that we couldn't live in cities anymore because they were choked with pollution was pretty new. At this point...
and probably driven by the assumption of affluent suburban Americans that, of course... cities are hellholes.
Yeah.
As God intended.
Right, as God intended, right? That's how come we can live in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Right about this time, Cleveland elected its first black mayor, Carl Stokes.
That's early for a major city. That's probably before Andrew Young or...
Yeah. And he was a progressive and a real powerful voice. His brother, Louis Stokes, was elected to the Congress during this same period. So this is, it's all...
Like you're saying elected to the Congress, like you're the Music Man or something.
Elected to he went to the Congress.
Like what year did the leave Congress? Like it's got to be like 1870s.
A long time before it left the Ukraine. And the two of them, and so Carl Stokes, as part of his program for Cleveland, because he was a colorful and civil rights era, like big city mayor, he started to draw attention to the pollution in the Cuyahoga as one of his major platforms. Like Cleveland is an absolute disaster area. And in order to make it a habitable place again, we need to direct attention to the pollution in the river. And and his brother was kind of sponsoring this kind of legislation. And then disaster strikes on June 22nd, 1969, which weirdly is after a couple years of Carl Stokes actually cleaning up the Cuyahoga, they had implemented local policies about dumping. They'd been working hard to clean up the river. Still, a spark from a passing train falls on a greasy mat.
Same old.
And the river catches fire. And
here we go again.
Yeah,
they're all like,
whoopsie-daisy.
oh.
The fire is nowhere near the extent of the fire in 52. It burns one railroad bridge and makes it, it ruins one railroad bridge. It kind of scorches another. There aren't any photographs of it because by the time someone with a camera raced down there, it was already under control.
It was out. Do these fires put themselves out, or
No, you kind of have to.
Trucks are dispatched.
Yeah, you get out there. The fire department kind of works on it. I don't know what you do. You pour water on it. There's already water all over it. You probably throw sand at it. I don't know. And again, it was a local problem. It didn't make the national news. It just sort of, the river smoldered. And Carl Stokes, said, hey, this is, and he tried to make it, and with his brother, tried to make it a national issue, called it out, and crickets.
Started a lot of fire under Congress.
Yes, under the Congress.
Because they'd already lit a fire under the railroad bridge.
But nothing happened until a couple of weeks later, Time magazine, Time was inaugurating a new section of the magazine in response to this movement called the environmental section. And
interesting.
It was really just, a page or two about
the idea is this is a beat now.
This is a beat. Yeah. Like what's happening. And this is the type of thing people love to read in magazines. Even then, like here's a picture of a giant waste dump. How do you like them apples?
Yeah, I remember this from the garbage barge entry. People do kind of love their fear porn of, and it's sad, clear-cut trees. And it really sells the movement when you see the photographic evidence.
And this is the dawn of 25 years of what you think of as localized disaster porn. So acid rain is killing these trees by Toronto, and killer bees are coming in from the south, and garbage barge and a 3 Mile Island. All of these things are kind of just prior to the disaster porn that we have today, which is everything is dying. The West is in drought and on fire, but humans aren't going to survive, right? That's the current iteration of what used to be.
Sure. And in a sequel, you always want to up the stakes.
Right.
This is screenwriting 101.
But so Time magazine writes an article about this Cuyahoga fire, but they put a picture from the 1952 fire in the article. The 1952 article where the flames are 5 stories tall, the bridge is on fire, boats are burning. It's really a killer. If you're going to put a picture of a river fire, that's the one.
How can we sleep when the boats are burning?
Yeah, there you go.
To coin a phrase. And they don't say this is
a picture from 52. No, they say
America falls for it.
A big fire happened on the Cuyahoga River. Can you believe it? And it suddenly enters the national consciousness as maybe the preeminent example of how far we've fallen. And
even though it's funny because this is entirely consistent with something that's happened since the 19th century and is getting better.
Yeah, this is 100 years of the river catching on fire, and now actually Carl Stokes has been working to remedy it. And what makes this article land so hard is this is right after the moon landing.
Oh, so it's just like we can put a man on the moon, but kind of rhetoric?
Well, and also right after Chappaquiddick, and so, which is another sordid river tale.
Same week as the moon landing.
And so
the astronauts missed it. To this day, they think Mary Jo Kopechne's still alive.
Yeah.
Buzz Aldrin's like, why won't she call me?
Yeah. But what makes this interesting is that this article with the giant picture of the burning boat appears in the Time magazine.
In the most sold Time magazine in decades.
It's got Ted Kennedy on the cover, and it's got stories of the moon. And so this is flying off the shelves. And then in the brand new environmental section, it's like, and guess what else?
The river's on fire.
To
add insult to injury.
And so this, really takes Scoop Jackson's environmental committee. It makes this kind of one event, galvanizes the public opinion, or rather galvanizes public opinion. It doesn't need,
in the Congress? Does the Congress take note of the public opinion?
The public opinion. And in quick succession, the Environmental Protection Agency is formed and signed into law by none other than that legendary environmentalist,
champion of the left,
Richard Nixon.
This has always been a pro-Nixon podcast.
Yep, that's right.
And we love the EPA, don't we, folks?
God bless him. And then in 1972, the Clean Water Act is passed. Again, very much sort of propelled by the experience of the Cuyahoga River catching on fire.
And so this is really just being driven by a real public outcry. People are now outraged and urgent about this, and the government has to be. I mean, and this was a time when government of both parties would actually try to solve problems instead of to make the other guy look bad.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, Nixon didn't say this is a bunch of hippies.
Right. Once again, the hippies have been using drugs and lighting rivers on fire.
It seemed like this was good business, right? We are.
Which would be true of
any
infrastructure
culture.
Legislation today. It just doesn't happen.
And also, a lot of these programs were already in the process, right? The government was already considering this. There was already an environmental movement. It's just, how are you going to argue with this picture of the river on fire? The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement was signed.
Love the GLQA.
This is... God, you're good at that. You pick out the...
I'm not. I missed the W, actually.
1970 was the first Earth Day, right? So just within a couple of years, when
does all the Love Canal cleanup stuff start?
That's later. That's the late 70s, or, mid to late 70s. And you know what? Love Canal and the Sutton Hoo are both on my list.
Coming soon.
Sutton Hoo is completely separate.
Yeah, why?
It's really nothing to do with that. They're next to each other on my list. So every time I see Love Canal, I think
about Viking longboats.
I immediately say
on the canal.
Sutton Hoo, and I don't. It's lost. Those two words have lost all meaning to me.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Sutton.
Sutton Hoo.
I don't know what that means.
Wah wah wah. But the Cuyahoga fire remained in our national consciousness long after. Actually, Randy Newman wrote a song about it right in that time. Called,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, called Burn On. He wrote that in 1972. But then within the Generation X culture, most famously, REM wrote their stern denunciation of American expansionism and industrialization.
It goes all the way back to, like, that song's not just about a river fire. It's also about Indians and settlers.
Yeah,
and
it's about stealing lands from the natives and look what we did with it. Look what a bad job we've done.
Yeah.
That was in 1986. And I think that is something that kind of kept it like that. That's where I learned about the Cuyahoga River fire was.
I had to look it up because I was like, what's the song about?
Yeah, right. Like Michael Stipe going, Cuyahoga.
Life is a rich pageant.
It was in 86. But now, if you go to Cleveland has, partly as a result of, trying to clean up the Cuyahoga, because it's still somewhat of a river in danger, but Cleveland has largely de-industrialized, or at least tried to.
And part of that is a lot of cities have taken these inner, like, harbor cores and tried to draw visitors in by making them the coolest part of town. Yeah,
Cleveland rebranded and also reblanded the area as the Flats, which they made tried to make a bustling, clubbing, rock and roll, cool kid part of Cleveland. Cleveland's a big town still. But upriver on the Cuyahoga, there's this really kind of beautiful national park on either side of the river that's full of bike trails. And it's actually, conveys a kind of wild river vibe, although it's downstream of, these decaying Rust Belt towns upriver. So
the cleanup worked.
The cleanup largely worked, although the Cuyahoga still has some issues, and including, I think, the river bottom is a EPA disaster site.
Like there are still all kinds of awful heavy metals and stuff down there.
Yeah, I mean, they continue to dredge the river, and they dredge it now. The river's 27 feet deep, where if it were left alone, it would be 1 foot deep and full of spawning fish.
Tugboats would have to tuck up their bottoms, though.
Yeah, but so it's a Superfund site, but also now a place of river walks and
a super fun site.
A super fun.
Let's put the super fun back in Superfund.
All of this culminates, Ken, in the Cuyahoga last year being designated as America's River of the Year.
Every year we have a river?
We have a River of the Year, and the River of the Year is the river that's made, it's kind of like Student of the Year. It's the river that's made the greatest progress.
Oh, I see. It's most improved.
Yeah.
The NBA has that.
So the River of the Year would be, in America, would be the Missouri every year if it weren't for the fact that, the Missouri, what can you say about the Missouri year after year? So every year, a new river gets this honor, gets the white ribbon, and it was the Cuyahoga last year.
People's sexiest river alive.
Yeah,
and that's the idea. It's okay. This I'm reading. This is given by American Rivers, which is a
major
some kind of rivers nonprofit.
Yep.
Who announced that June, while we're recording this, is National Rivers Month. What are you doing for National Rivers Month?
I'm going to go to Slippery Rock, Oregon, and slip down a rock, a very slippery rock in Oregon.
I'm going to just light the Cuyahoga on fire.
Well, this show will not air until after River Month.
But next year, make sure you celebrate. Okay, this is kind of new. This started in 2019. Oh, I guess it was 2 years ago. This started in 2019 with the announcement of America's River of the Year. Oh, that's the 50th anniversary of the Cuyahoga Fire. There we go.
Hey.
Last year it was the Delaware. But I guess for the last 34 years, American Rivers has announced their 10 most endangered rivers.
Oh, boy.
This year, the snake is endangered.
Oh, well, I should also say
I guess it's a salmon issue.
The Cuyahoga was also extensively dammed in the 20th century to generate power, and during the boom time of hydroelectric damming, and now a lot of the dams on the Cuyahoga, and that the dams just increased the kind of slow-moving sludgy, rancidness of the river.
That's how you get Ninja Turtles, though.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, but a lot of those dams are now getting torn down as part of the restoration of rivers movement. So we're going to, in our lifetime, see a lot of those Cuyahoga dams consigned to the dam bin of history.
The dam wastebasket of history. This year, the Raccoon River is the 9th most endangered river.
I have never heard of the Raccoon
It's
River.
apparently a small Iowa river which has been contaminated by factory farms. So
sure, of
raccoons.
All the poop and the antibiotics.
Des Moines' drinking water is now full of whatever awful stuff gets used in these factory farms. So
hormones from cows are giving.
Puberty is now starting at age 4 in Des Moines.
Oh dear.
So, thank you, American Rivers, for bringing visibility to all the problems of the Raccoon River. But at least it's not on fire.
Thank you, futurelings in the dozens, for suggesting and resuggesting the Cuyahoga River fire.
You can now leave us alone. And that concludes the Cuyahoga River Fire /fires. Entry 309.IS4302. Certificate number 12398 in the omnibus. Hopefully we continue to progress as a species, and much as we cleaned up our rivers, we clean up the sludginess of our
skies and...
I was going to say internet.
Oh.
Internet's very sludgy.
Do you feel like we can clean up? Well, we have to take down the dams. Wait, no. No, don't take down the dams on the internet. Build more dams.
More dams.
More dams and less sludge.
But in our day, we were on social media at Omnibus Project. I'm at Ken Jennings. You can find at John Roderick, especially on his Patreon. You could email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com to send in your suggestions for shows. Suggest Sutton Hoo and Love Canal.
Yeah,
that's going to be one show.
One show. Love Canal, Sutton Hoo.
Love Canal backed with Sutton Hoo.
There will be for the rest of my life, I will have those two just burned because they've both been on my list for 3 years.
It's like the Dr. Seuss book, Sutton Here's a Who. You could mail us physical items. Please mail us all your Nixon era memorabilia to Omnibus Project, P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. We will critique it. We'll rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. We will decide if it's one of America's 10 most endangered river garbage pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You could find fellow Futurelings in our era just by looking for the Futurelings group on Facebook or Reddit or Discord or what have you. The best way to support the show, however, as always, is with the Patreon. Of our tens of thousands of listeners, somewhere around 1,500 of them, I think, actually financially support the show every month, without which Omnibus would end. And rivers would light on fire and you wouldn't even know anymore.
We are deeply grateful for that support. You know, Ken is a nationally famous millionaire.
If you count Canada.
Whereas, but the thing about him being a nationally famous millionaire is that he really silos his industries. So, for instance, when he and I go out to tacos, he's like, well, over here I'm a millionaire, but here at the taco restaurant, I am just a regular guy who only has $5. And that's
how I get away with paying no income tax.
That's right. That's how Duff McKagan is when he takes his band Loaded out. He's like, well...
is this how he manages to not pick up the tab places?
Yeah. Well, no, Duff is very generous, but he, it's important to him that when Loaded tours, they tour on their own merits. And so when he's in Guns N' Roses,
I see,
he's getting flown from show to show on a solid gold jet. But in Loaded, he wants Loaded's own industry to pay their way, but he also wants a tour bus because he's Duff McKagan. So it ends up that Loaded is always stretched really thin.
At the airport, he always says, "I'm Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses.
Right.
Welcome to the Port of Seattle." He never says, "I'm Duff McKagan from Loaded, a band named after my favorite kind of baked potato."
What do I say at the airport?
Do you just say I'm John Roderick?
Hi, this is John Roderick I don't say from the Long Winters, from the Long Winters. Make sure you don't leave your baggage unattended on the airport concourse. You should have one of those.
I should replace you. They're like, yeah, John's out of the rotation now.
Come on.
Hey, this is Bean Dad.
Stop it.
Welcome to the city of Seattle.
Boo.
What does yours say not to leave your luggage unattended?
I said that they had me do 10 of them.
I've heard you at the airport before, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it might be all musicians.
Oh, right.
Because they've got the live music in the concourse now.
The city of rock and roll.
We stole it from Austin. We saw Austin make their airport music-y.
You know what? That's exactly what we did. Well, the Music Commission, we were down there at South by Southwest, and somebody was like, hey, Austin's airport's really cool. Why don't we do that? And we did it.
Keep Seattle Austin-like.
Yeah.
That's what we always say.
Look at us now.
So thank you to those who support. If you've been tempted but have not done it, now's the time. Go to patreon.com/omnibus project and see how you could
support this show so that it's, it's very separate. So Ken and I can ride in his tour bus.
It's true. None of the Jeopardy money gets funneled into Omnibus. That's for sure. No. I don't want John to see a cent of that. But you get cool stuff if you support the show.
Yep. It's a cool thing. It's a whole subculture.
It's a bonus episode a month. If this wasn't enough for you, if this and the 9 other shows this month weren't enough for you, you could get a 10th one absolutely free.
That's right.
It's like a sandwich card.
A 10th one where we mea culpa a lot. Future links from our vantage point in your distant past. We have no idea how long our civilization survived, but we hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word, but if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.